Welcome everyone. I apologise for the delay and I formally declare open this Submissions Committee meeting of the Colac Otway Shire Council on the 16th of August 2023. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of the Colac Otway Shire. Enable this Council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. Amen. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. Please be advised that this Submissions Committee meeting is recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in open Submissions Committee meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. The purpose of this Submissions Committee meeting is to hear persons who indicated they wish to speak in support of their written submissions to the events policy and the proposed local law. I note that Councillor Graham Costin is an apology for today's meeting. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Thank you. Councillors, I propose that we move to confirm the minutes of the Submissions Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 2nd of August 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor White, seconded Councillor Arnott. Thank you. Is to be opposed? Councillors, put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried 6-0. Verbal submissions from submitters. Verbal submissions from those submitters who have confirmed in writing they wish to speak to their submission will be heard prior to the consideration of the agenda item. A limit of 5 minutes will apply to each submitter. We do have a few submitters today, so we'll try to stick to that timeline. Just a reminder that we expect everything to be respectful and conducted in relation to our governance rules. Item 8.1, Events Policy, Public Submissions. The purpose of this report is to hear verbal submissions in relation to the draft events policy. The following submitters have requested to be heard in support of their submission. Lynn Russell and Paul Lamont. I note that both are here at the moment. So Lynn, I was wondering if you could come forward and talk first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the scribe, I have a copy of this presentation so she doesn't have to write it all down, and I've also got copies for the CEO, the councillors and Mr. Surin and our events staff.
Did you want to hand that out now, Lynn, or after?
Whenever. Thank you.
Thanks.
The submission I put in, I have further information on these. Number one, where in this draft does it refer to the events officer and what the events officer's role is? In definition, events impact, events organisers, Colac Otway Shire Council, there is no mention of the events officer as a definition. But in section event site selection, and I quote, events organisers are encouraged to contact the council early in the events planning process to discuss appropriate site selection. Should this not read, events organisers are encouraged to contact the events officer early in the process of planning to discuss all aspects of the proposed event and any support needed, and this be highlighted and as a standalone statement. And it should be in the front of policy. Number two, where is it clearly stated what the council's role is in events? Throughout this draft policy, the council's role is not clearly stated. It is mentioned in purpose, in scope, reference, values, in fact in 14 different areas. Should this not list council's role as a clearly identifiable list? Examples, managing an effective events application process, providing advice and support to event organisers, and promoting the council's community grants program. 3, definition of private land. This is very confusing. Would it not read better as, quote, any land not owned, managed or occupied by local, state or federal government, as this would encompass all council, Parks Victoria, Dwelp, Regional Roads Victoria, owned, managed and occupied land. Under statement of policy, ratepayers do not subsidise events. Then who subsidises events through the Colac Otway Shire Events Grants program? This statement is a contradiction to fact. 4, under timelines and compliance, the application timelines below are a guide only, but is not expressed in the grid below. At first glance, it appears to be cut and dried timelines, maybe better expressed in application guide timelines and inverted commas or in brackets guide only, as a heading at the top of the grid with a note that the events officer will discuss timelines with applicants. 6, the definition of a policy is a statement of intent and is implemented as a procedure or protocol. It is an accepted set of rules or ideas about what should be done, while a guideline aims to streamline particular processes according to a set of routine or sound practice. Guidelines outline all the expectations of event organisers in relation to planning, approval, delivery and reporting on the event. Isn't this a mixture of policy and guidelines which don't meet either definition? While this document meets governance and legal requirements, it is not consumer friendly or focused. A lot of Colac Otway Shire events are produced by volunteer organisations and groups who do not necessarily have the time, skills or expertise to navigate the required process, let alone navigate through this policy. 7, where is the event application process? There is no clear process for organisers to follow. A process creates standards and helps everyone to know how to operate and can improve the way customers and staff deal with business. Setting out a clear, concise process would start with the first step. Contact the council's event officer, who will provide clarity, outline roles and responsibilities to support event organisers in the delivery of events in accordance with the legislative and regulatory regime that we need to follow. Simple steps. Example, step 1, meet the Colac Otway Shire Events Officer to discuss the event. 2, complete and submit an events application form. Step 3, advise as to whether additional information is required. Step 4, if necessary, event organisers to meet with the Colac Otway Shire Events Officer to clarify event details. Step 5, event organisers to be advised of permits and approvals required and items to be addressed in events management plan. Step 6, if event approved, an event authorisation or a memorandum of understanding will be developed. And step 7, events implemented in accordance with conditions. Simple, easy steps. 8, where in the events grants mentioned? This is an important part of the financial consideration for events organisers and is afforded 2 lines with no reference of where to find out further information on this program. 9, the policy has listed 18 legislative requirements that an applicant is required to demonstrate compliance with. The first is the Building Act. Oh boy. It's 609 pages long and nowhere in the table of contents is events even listed. Page 89 to 94, Division 2, occupancy permits in brackets, places of public entertainment, is the only easily identified reference to anything to do with events. How are we supposed to follow that? When the Victorian legislation was Googled and then events were searched, I stopped counting the number of acts after 114 and looked at the first act listed, Major Events Act 2009, and after finding it was 218 pages long, I gave up. Would it not be less of a deterrent to add that the events officer will be of assistance ensuring events organisers are aware of these requirements and refer organisers to the relative page of section 10? Where in this policy is there reference to the council's website? The website should be the first port of call and provide relevant, accurate and consumer-friendly ease of navigation. 11. Council's website, events and filming inquiry. In the I would like to inquire about section, should planning an event be included? 12. Documentation. Where in the events policy is there a reference to the required documentation and where documents can be accessed? Example, under values, the Colac Otway Shire 2050 Community Vision, how do organisers find this document? Under events application to demonstrate compliance with the legislative requirements, where do organisers find the Colac Otway Shire local laws, the planning scheme? A simple grid, and I've given you an example, would be of great assistance. 13. These documents and the relative section pages should be included in a list of references. 2 simple columns, Colac Otway Shire related policies, procedures and guidelines, and external documents, and I've given examples. I've also included the 19 documents that I've referred to and used in this research. Thank you.
Thank you. Do stay there for a moment if you don't mind. Councillors have any questions? No worries. Thanks, Lynn. Mr. Lamont, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My name's Paul Lamont from Cressy Aerodrome. Just wanted to make a submission into the events part of the policy. It's pretty hard to follow up. It's exactly what just come up in the last part of the documentary before from the lovely lady down there. I just find, running from, say, Cressy Aerodrome side of it, the policies put forward is what we just as stipulated just before, is that there's no private land. It's all about council land. Also, what we find is, because if we go through the Shire's website, it's like going through what do the boys call it, a minefield. You can't go through. Like, we spent nearly, the other day we gave an example in our meeting, 45 minutes just to find different things under tourism, under agendas and all those things. It needs to be more simplified in that website. Also, what I find is that when we run an event, we'll put in for an event and we'll go for a pope or something like that. It goes away to planning. Planning comes back and says more information and just buries you. You're trying to look at the logistics of things, of trying to build up the event that you want to do and get everything what you need to have around you, but it's just left to you. I feel that what it needs to happen is that when it is triggered an event, that is an officer pointed to that event and help you, guide you through so you can get over all the hurdles of the Shire. Some of the issues that I find was just brought up in the last issues before. We need to also find out, different planning positions where we need to be at. Like we might have an event and like for say 25, and then all of a sudden we get told, wait a minute, we still need traffic management. So to me, that just is overboard. There needs to be a trigger somewhere where we know as an event holder at what size of the event is that going to trigger. The other thing too is that, which was brought up in just the last statement before, is about the building. What are we allowed to do around the buildings? What do we need for the major events? What can be brought in to cater for us to help? What we've got to remember as a Shire, that tourism is probably one of the biggest import and export you could have. I mean, the amount of money that can be spent in this town from having a major event is just incredible, and it's just endless. So, yeah, that's all I'd like to say here. That'd be fantastic.
Thanks, Mr. Villamont. Has anyone got any questions? No worries, thank you. Do councillors have any questions of officers? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Thanks, Councillor Hanson, and secondly, Councillor Arnott. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson, did you wish to speak?
I would just like to thank all the people who made submissions to the events policy, both verbal and written. The events policy, councillors now have the opportunity to have a think about the submissions that have been made, raise any questions that they might have, particularly after today with the verbal submissions, and it'll be coming to a council meeting shortly. The events policy, is a really important policy because why it's extremely important, I guess, is there's processes that need to be followed, lots of boxes that need to be ticked, but most importantly, there's an amazing amount of people in this community that put on some amazing events for the enjoyment of all of us, and we want to try and make it as simplified as we can for people to navigate, because certainly a lot of people are they're putting on these events for lots of different reasons, but a lot of the time it's enormous amount of hours go into it and a lot of volunteer time. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Arnott, did you wish to speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Potter. Pardon me. Just endorse Councillor Hanson's remarks. Thank you, the submitters. And obviously the people who organise these events are usually often, say, small business and with limited resources and or volunteers, which make a significant difference and input into our community. I've been there and done that. So to have an events policy that works for you is extremely important, and without your input we can't achieve that. And I'm really impressed with some of the submissions we've received, which are not just around the problems but also helping us to provide solutions. So I really appreciate that feedback, and I can assure you all of your comments and feedback will be included in the final result. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnott. Anybody else? Councillors, we have a motion in front of us. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 6-0. Item 8.2, proposed local law public submissions. The purpose of this report is to hear from submitters who have requested to speak in support of their submissions and to receive written submissions to the proposed local law. The following submitters have requested to be heard in support of their submission. The first person I have on my list is unable to attend today, Vicky Jeffrey. We have Sean Mulcahy attending by online. Sean, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yeah, we can see you now, thank you. So we'll need that camera on while you're talking. I'll just continue through the list. Mr. James Judd, Mr. Barrett, his name's down here, but I haven't seen him yet. Mr. Billing, Russell Adams, and Deborah Chant. So, Sean, we'll start with you, please, if you could speak to your submission.
Thank you, Mayor Potter, and thank you, councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of the Victorian Pride Lobby, which is a community-based advocacy group that represents lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer and same-gender attracted Victorians of all ages, including those who live, study and work in Colac Otway Shire. LGBTQA+ communities experience disproportionately high levels of poor mental health and well-being, and this is often due to experiences of stigma, prejudice, discrimination, harassment and abuse on the basis of our sexual orientation, gender identity and sex characteristics. And this can result in LGBTIQA+ communities feeling excluded and invisible. We strongly support the proposed General Local Law 2023 that will end the non-binary bathroom ban in the Shire. Clause 11.10 of the General Local Law of 2013 stipulates that a person must not enter or use any dressing room, shower, convenient the opposite gender.
Sorry, Sean. You just froze for 10 or 20 seconds. Could you start that last point again, please?
I was just repeating the clause in the local law, which is 11.10, which stipulates that a person mustn't enter or use any dressing room, shower, convenience, or other area in a municipal building which has been appropriated for persons of the opposite gender. So the local law presumes a binary conception of gender and prevents people who don't conform to that binary from accessing dressing rooms, showers and conveniences such as bathrooms in municipal buildings, since they don't identify with the female or male gender and may therefore be considered opposite to both. What this means is that non-binary people cannot go to public toilets without the fear of being issued with an infringement notice or fine. The local law therefore discriminates against non-binary people on the basis of their gender identity, as it prevents them from accessing some facilities. Now, obviously, a program of work needs to be undertaken to update older facilities to provide all gender options, and we welcome the commitment in the public toilet strategy to include all gender facilities in all councils' future public toilet configurations. In the meantime, action needs to be taken immediately to ensure that non-binary people can access toilet facilities, and amendments to the local law are necessary to ensure this. This will ensure that non-binary people can access public toilets throughout the Shire, creating more equitable access to these facilities. We note that there are provisions under the local law that prevent indecent or offensive behaviour in municipal buildings, as well as provisions under the Summary Offences Act that can be enforced by authorised council officers. This should ensure that all people can access public bathrooms and other facilities safely. There are only 12 councils in Victoria that have such a provision in their local laws, and of these, at least 3 are in the process of removing this provision. This provision's never been enforced in the Shire, so it's effectively redundant. It's also questionable whether the community was even aware of this provision until its proposed removal. We further note that the local law must not be inconsistent with the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. At present, the local law may be inconsistent with the Charter as it discriminates against non-binary people. It therefore may be revoked by the Governor on recommendation of the Minister under Section 85 of the Local Government Act, or subject to challenge under Section 103 of the Supreme Court Act. We would suggest that retaining the current provision would expose Council to a costly legal challenge, complicated by the fact that Council's already acknowledged that the provision is inconsistent with an Act, being the Sex Discrimination Act, and this is confirmed by legal advice from Maddox. We'd further aver that the current provision is inoperative as it's inconsistent with the local law requirements. So therefore, any enforcement action would be effectively void. It is, in essence, a dead-letter law and should be rightly removed. No qualified lawyer would certify a local law with the current provision in it as being consistent with the local law requirements. Therefore, there's no real way a local law could be made with the current provision retained. In conclusion, removing this provision will not change the way that the majority of people use public toilets, but it will mean that non-binary people can use public toilets and facilities where all gender options are not available. And we welcome any opportunity to work together to ensure that the consultation responds to the needs of LGBTIQA+ people who live, work, recreate and visit Colac Otway Shire. And I welcome the opportunity to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Councillors, are there any questions of Sean? No questions, Sean. Thanks for your submission. Mr. Judd, did you wish to speak to your submission?
parking both sides of the road and also using the roadside as a parking space for vehicles for sale. Because that narrows the roads terribly when there's a vehicle, and sometimes they stay there for weeks. And it's been going on for years in the Colac urban area.
Thanks, Mr Judge. I think you made a couple of submissions. That's your submission. Thank you. Councillors, you got any questions for Mr Judge? No questions, thank you. Mr Billing, would you like to speak to your submission, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just one question. I know it's not a question and answer session, but could I ask whether councillors have been provided with the full submissions or just officer summaries?
We have the full submissions, Mr Billing.
Right. Okay, thank you. This issue is clearly not as simple as it appeared in the early stages of the release. If I could perhaps start with my concern about the review process, regardless of what the outcome might be. I was first made aware of the omission of the clause relevant to gender toilets, etc. And I contacted 3 councillors and was told basically that, hang on, what are you talking about? They appeared to be unaware that omission had gone out to public commentary without them being aware of the change. Now, whether that's been corrected, I don't know. Having sat in a council chamber and having to deal with virtually the same sort of thing, local laws, etc., it's absolutely critical that when a document goes out to the community, that it has the endorsement of the council. And that doesn't appear to have happened. And as I said, it's not a question and answer session, but the community would like to know how that managed to get to the stage it was. And it was only picked up initially by the Colac Herald. The process to me is not what the community expects from the councillors. There is some doubt as to how relevant the Sex Discrimination Act is in this case. My reading of it, and I noted that Maddox have made comment, my reading of it that it relates largely to the workplace and was set in place to ensure that there was no discrimination between male, female in the workplace. I'm not too sure how it links over into this area. In my view, it's still up for legal interpretation, still tested in court, and until tested in court, it is but a legal opinion. I guess the next issue is, okay, so we as a community now have to deal with this issue. Councillors would be aware that there is already significant numbers of people that are concerned about the process. And whilst I note the previous submitter has put up a fairly compelling argument about the rights of all people within the community, it would seem to me that we're now faced with a situation where the rights of the majority appear to be trampled over by the rights of a minority. Now, I'm not too sure how council is going to deal with that and how council's responsibility as advocates for the community will deal with that issue. So it's obviously not a simple one. Some of the responses from the question and answer one, I don't think I'll bother going into it. It's Dorothy Dix type thing. However, I guess my question now is, what is council going to do about the issue, which is obviously significant conflict within the community? How does council propose to meet its obligations to ensure peace, order and good government, which is a requirement, and provide a physical and social environment in which the residents can enjoy a quality of life that meets the general expectations of the community? And once again, why is it that the rights of a minority can override the rights of the majority? Thank you for hearing me out. I'll look forward to the next council agenda.
Thanks, Mr Billing. Are you happy to take any questions? I'm not saying councillors have any, but
No,
before
that's
us,
fine.
are there any questions for Mr Billing? No, thanks, Alan.
No worries. Thank you.
Mr Adams, please, would you like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor and councillors. Although I think my case is done and dusted, because council officers seem to have already made up their mind about gender neutral toilets, change rooms, because it goes back to each council. About 2 months ago, 75% of councils had changed to gender neutral change rooms. Now it's 85, and each time it goes up, council officers say, yes, we've got to follow the majority. Under the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984, which is 40 years ago, why are we now changing? We've had 40 years to change, why now? And under the Equal Opportunity Act of 2010, there are general exceptions. The area of public life where discrimination is necessary to protect someone's health and safety. And in my case, we think it's the female members of our family, as the following facts show. Social planner and public toilet researcher Catherine Webber says in the 2017 survey of Colac Shire, it was found that women preferred separate gender facilities strongly, while men had no preference. The Sydney Public Toilet Strategy of 2014 showed 75% of women had a strong preference for single-sex change rooms and toilets over unisex ones due to enhanced privacy, 32%, hygiene, 29%, and security, 19%. The Australian Bureau of Stats of 2016 show that 97% of sex offenders are male, and males of 15 to 19 years are the highest offenders, with a rate of 102.9% per 100,000 cases. Now, I've found it very difficult to get any stats, and you sort of have to go under freedom of information to get anything, and which is beyond my technical abilities. Since 2013, we've been able to choose our gender, and it doesn't have to be male or female, it can be anything. And the Sydney Sunday Times of UK, under the Freedom of Information, found that 90% of all offences happened in gender-neutral rooms, with only 10% in single-sex changing or toilet rooms. I think that shows that there is some danger to someone's health or safety there. I'm not saying we shouldn't have unisex male and female toilets. That's probably the answer. And I'm asking, is council going to make these changes and therefore pay for them? The other thing, and you'll probably laugh at me for this, but it's happening in schools at the moment, secondary schools, that some students are calling themselves cats, not male, female or anything, but cats. So hypothetically, are they entitled to have a room for themselves? And as you know, I'm strongly in favour of the current form of toilets, change rooms. Okay, thank you for hearing me.
Thanks, Russell. Are there any questions for Mr Adams? No. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Deborah Chant.
Sorry, a bit overwhelming for me. I'd just like to make a comment about the two others, quickly about the website. It's very hard to navigate and it's a highly underutilised tool for promotion of the Shire and for tourism. And the second point, why women are scared of men being in their toilets is because they think they might be raped. Okay, so my submission was about cats. I thought there were already that cats had to be contained on the property of the owner for 24 hours in a day. Is that correct? Is that the rule?
We don't usually...
All right, okay,
but-
no
but-
questions. All right, so to have a curfew
We can get back to you with that answer if you'd
from
like.
sunset to sunrise, I just thought that they mustn't have had to be confined to property. I always thought that they had to. So therefore, you're saying again that they have to be retained. Who's going to enforce it in the dark that the cats are on the owner's property? There was a letter in the Colac Herald a few weeks ago actually about someone who obviously didn't like this bylaw or this local law change that said, my cat kills 20 rats a night. Well, it might kill 20 rats a night, but it will also kill lots of mammals and small marsupials that are out at night. So, because cats don't kill to eat, they just kill. My land's for wildlife and I have 4 cats that come onto my place. One owner says her cat is an inside outdoor cat and if she's not home and she's going out, then the cat just stays out. And another one doesn't care her cat's out because she has a cat because she has rats in her house. Another one's got a bell around its neck, but it still hunts on my place, and another one runs away quickly. For some reason, cat owners think that their cat has a mind of its own and they either can't control it or they don't want to. Whenever there's a threatened species, animal species, the first predator that's mentioned is a fox and then a cat. And anyone that lives in Bamborough or the Otways will know how big feral cats grow and fierce they look. It used to be that people were shock horrified when I told them, city people told them that people on farms used to put the kittens in a bag and drown them in the trough. They were horrified at that. Or other people, they go for a drive out to the Otways and let the cat out because, hey, there's lots of animals there. So those cats grow into feral cats and are wiping out our small marsupials and mammals. Okie dokie, that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Debbie? Yeah. There's no questions anyway. Thanks for coming back. Councillors, do we have any questions of officers? Thank Thank you, councillors. The officers have provided a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this matter? Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Is there a seconder? Councillor White. Is it be opposed? Councillor Finnegan.
Yes, I'd like to thank everyone for making their submissions today or speaking to their submissions on the proposed local law. Everything from cats to bushfire regulations to public bathrooms and the like. It's good the community is able to have its voice heard in this format, and I'm sure that all of us will think upon the submissions that have been made today and see if we make any changes to things as they stand. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillor Arnott. Sorry, Councillor White, couldn't read me writing.
Just to endorse Councillor Finnegan's comments, and you know, a lot of people have put a lot of thought into their submissions and have done a lot of research and obviously feel very strongly about some of the issues put before us, and we thank them for that, and we'll take that into account when we make our final decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Hart.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd also like to thank everyone who's made a submission and the people who've attended today and the people who've sent in submissions but perhaps haven't attended today. It gives us a lot of material that we'll need to think about in the context of the local laws and, for that matter, for the earlier item as well.
Thank you. Now the councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried 6-0. That concludes today's submission hearing. Thanks everyone who came along and spoke. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody.